Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm going to try to describe what we are going to do in the next 15 minutes. And it's not exactly speed dating, but almost. My name is Mary Avis Bokel. I happen to be one of the international trade specialists with a piece of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and that piece is called the U.S. Commercial Service. I am here in Irvine, about 3 blocks away. And the reason that I'm here is that I'm hooked with partners in crime, like my colleague from HQ, Hong Fong
Pho, otherwise HP, if that's easier. I don't own that company, but we do use their products.
Hong Fong is our country desk officer in Washington for Thailand.
And you probably don't even know that they're desk officers. What do? They push papers, right? Well, I do that sometimes, but sometimes they let me out to visit Mary Avis and to talk with the public about what we do. We're in Washington. Mary Avis is here in Irvine. And we also have people working for the Department of Commerce in about, 70 different countries. And their jobs is to help you export.
I have the responsibility for the healthcare sector for here in Orange County. Overseas, in every U.S. embassy and consulate, yes, we have Americans who rotate in and out. And the gentleman that was supposed to be speaking to you today is Jim Mayfield, the director now of our Irvine office. Jim had served in Vietnam before coming here. Prior to that, in Shanghai and also in Hong Kong. So that international expertise, there's nobody who feels worse than he does this morning not being well to be here. So if we can go ahead and tell you that our focus is export out of the U.S. May I ask you, those of you who are in production or almost ready for production, have you also identified an export market of focus for you to also sell or go there? Those who have, could you raise your hands? May I say, come on, come on. We were talking about IP prior to the break. When you do your intellectual property here, are you also making a selection of at least 1 or 2 or 3 countries where you are also potentially wanted? And should you be also looking at the IP needs there? May I ask, for those of you who have done that, which countries have you selected? May I ask?
Typically your main body, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, those are the typical ones.
Okay. And is it economically affordable?
Depends on your definitions, usually 100,000 or 200,000 per filing.
The question is, what would be the cost if you didn't?
Quite expensive.
Who's going to take it there and register it or have it there before you?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and the cost to get that back again. Okay? Go ahead, my friend.
Yes, I want to reemphasize that point. Unlike copyrights where you wrote it and it became your property, patents do not automatically become your property. And if you are exporting, particularly to the region of the world that I cover, Asia Pacific, if you don't register your product, if you don't put your patents, more than likely it's going to be taken from you. Now, countries do that. We used to do that back in 1776. Great Britain would come up with something, and sure, there was no law against taking it, so we did. But today, the products are much more sophisticated, and as one of the previous speaker spoke about, you can make money off of it, and so can other people. So it's important to protect your IPR, and it's the environment outside of the U.S. can be much more difficult to navigate. That's where we can help.
May I add that online at export.gov/healthcare, you will find a healthcare export resource guide. That export resource guide has already identified between 10 and 20 of the basic information that you may want to know regarding that market. It's not who the partner is there that you may want to be in touch with and doing work with in the long run, but for you not to be aware of what your tax dollar and ours has already paid for is, I think, for you to not take a very important step. What we'd like to make sure of is, go ahead, Hong.
Yeah, well, I just want to throw some numbers because it's very abstract until you talk about dollars and cents. And so that's the size of the U.S. medical product export. And the blue one is the global pie, if you will, right? For the country that I work on and deal with, Thailand, the numbers are, if you count pharmaceuticals and medical devices, pharmaceutical, we have a better idea, and that's the total pie is about $4 billion. For medical devices, we're still working to try to get the numbers for that, but our export last year was about $250 million for medical devices. That's because a lot of the manufacturing for many of our companies are also done in countries, but some of that is coming back, reshoring, if you will.
You take us to the next slide, please. There's the percentage of the global medical device market. And that was what we're trying to make sure that you're aware of. And by the way, happy to share this with you following the presentation today. Can we take it to the next one, my friend? Companies that export grow faster. It is sad but true. 8.5% less likely to go out of business if, in fact, if they do look globally, it is a lot healthier. Can we take it to the next one? In the healthcare industry, number of people employed, of the medical companies, 80% of them have fewer than 50 employees. So it is made up of medium and small size companies. That is our focus. We want to be a piece of your puzzle, but we deal with you individually for market entry and your needs met.
And in many cases, you've heard about the big companies. They can go out, they can license your products, they can, or services or IP, and they can handle that fairly well because they do have international departments. Small and medium-sized enterprise oftentimes have a hard time figuring out the markets, and that's why you're our client.
Can we take it to the next one? Again, just to give you the forecast in billions, we will, as I said, make these slides available to you if that's something that you would like. I think what I need you to understand is that we work with the industry sector, but we work with one company at a time. And if it is identifying the regulatory environment there, then that's what we want to do. We want to answer that question. Can we take it to the next one, my friend? And now this is us. That piece in every U.S. embassy and consulate, again, not just Americans who rotate out every 2 to 4 years, but the nationals that stay and have the medical industry knowledge. So if someone is looking for a distributor in that market, I on this side would be asking you, what is your criteria? What are you looking for that distributor in Singapore, or that distributor in Vietnam, or that distributor in Germany? What is it? And what we do is we get your criteria, and we use that criteria to use our in-country staff to identify 3, 4, 5 people who may meet your needs. This is an example. We don't pick them, and you don't pick them long distance. You should, your choice, go and meet each one of those 3, 4, 5 people that we've identified seem to meet your needs. And if that's part of the puzzle, our bottom line is you finding the right one. We don't pick them, you give us the criteria. Market access problems, easy to see.
Market access, that's me in Washington. Once you started exporting and you find that you have a problem in country, and invariably, sooner or later, you will, especially if you're successful, that's when you call us. Ghostbusters.
Yep. 12 months, our clients see $622,000 in new revenue, 7% increase in new employment, 3 jobs saved. Why are we doing it? That increased sales, increased production, should mean increased jobs. That's why my tax dollar and yours is being spent to be a piece of it.
And this is just the medical device sectors, I believe. It's not everything.
Go ahead, Ben. This, we'd like you to please understand, it's you who develops the export strategy, the same way that we were talking about the protection of your IP ahead of time. Do you have need for any background checks on who you may work with in country? Can you utilize us to do some matchmaking? Can you end up going and meeting with our staff and being introduced? It's very sexy to be introduced by your government there. Customized market research, yes, we do have online, as I made reference to, broad industry research on some of the key markets for the healthcare sector where we think it has a very strong export potential. But the broad is not what we want you to walk away with. What we do want you to walk away with is our individual desire to work specifically with you and market entry. That's the Healthcare Technology Resource Guide that we made reference to. I know that we were running a little long. We promised Dan that we would try to make sure that we gave you a chance to ask a few questions if you would be so kind, and happy to follow up. What the CEO program is corporate executive office. Instead of going into the cost, for example, at a Medica for a full booth cost, we put together an area that would be about a third of this room. It is set up so that you can go and have a table, and you would have a multilingual assistant. And we'd work in advance of that event to identify potential buyers and or distributors who want to meet you there. I'm using that as the example at Medica. CMEF, the China Medical Equipment Fair, would be another one. That's the Healthcare Resource Guide and the topics that are covered. And last but not least, what does your website look like? Can someone, as you look at your website, do you see any kind of a button there, as an example, that says international, or multilingual, or an interest expressed site where I can put other than city and state? Please, with this, there's a whole series of information that we can help share with you should you want to assure that your website is globally sexier.
I was just down in AACC, American Association of Clinical Chemistry, and the one thing that I took away from that was just for in vitro diagnostics, the little slides that test your bloods and things like that, it's a huge industry. They take up the entire San Diego Convention Center. And it's big, huge business, really. And so there's a lot of money to be made.
And what we did there was that we reached out to every U.S. exhibitor in advance, every U.S. exhibitor. And we asked them if they wanted to meet international buyers. And before AACC started, we pushed the profiles of the U.S. companies who said yes to international buyers. We then began to work to put those buyers together with the U.S. firm. We also brought in our staff from 11 countries. That staff, the medical industry nationals from each country, were going out and meeting those companies who had said, yeah, definitely. And so we're trying to show you basically the events that we're active in. We will always be at AACC. We will always be at Medica. And in this county, This is an incredible county for this industry. And so I would love working with Dan, we would love working with Dan and you all in the future, see how we can meet your needs individually as well as collectively.
I had 23 individuals coming from Thailand just to look at our products. Right? You don't even have to go there. We bring them to you.
That's Jim, and Jim does not get sick. Guess what? He got sick this morning, and it's terribly unusual. That is our website. You can see the online link to the the resource guide, the medical healthcare resource guide. That's our Twitter account, and we would be honored to give you individual follow-up and to work with Dan in any way we can for the future.
Thank you for joining the Mary Avis and HP show.